Hello everyone, welcome back to Major Hi-Fi. I'm Luke. Today we have a headphone from HifiMan. This is the new Arya Stealth. This is an update of the original Arya, and it has received quite a lot of buzz, unsurprisingly, as the original was already quite popular. So let's go on ahead and unbox this. We're going to talk about how it sounds on its own, how it compares to the original, all that fun stuff, and let's get right into it. So a pretty simple unboxing process. There's not a ton in here. First, my favorite thing, which is a bunch of paper. So we get the headphones, of course. I'm gonna carefully take these out of here. They are quite secure. As you can see, they look exactly like the original version. They are almost identical, by which I mean if you have them side by side, they are impossible to tell apart. The only cosmetic difference is that the ear pads have a slightly different material, and even that you cannot visually tell apart, but you can feel it, and it feels a bit different, a little bit more natural to the touch in terms of how soft it is just on this inner part of the ear pad. And then we get a cable. This is a crystalline copper cable. It's got that rope-like texture you see on more and more cables these days. Kind of seems to be the go-to, I guess. Fairly long, pretty standard length. And that is all that we get, to my knowledge. Is there more hiding underneath this? No, there's not. This is not the correct type of stand for this headphone, but it'll have to do. All right, so looks-wise, in terms of what's new, there's, of course, really nothing to talk about. In terms of what's here that was already there on the old version, it's the same ovular-shaped ear cups. We've got really big ear pads and just an overall large headphone that definitely does kind of create a fairly good grip on the head. I don't think it's too tight or too loose. It feels like a pretty standard level of tightness around your head. Doesn't exert a ton of force on it, but it does feel secure. My only complaint, and it's not a huge one, is just that to adjust the headband, you have to do this. I don't like that apparatus. Something about that on a pair of headphones that runs for $15.99. Maybe that is just my own anxieties, but I don't like having to kind of push and click something so rigidly on a piece of equipment that is this expensive. It just doesn't feel right. But it does ensure that the headband will stay where you need it to. It's definitely exact, that's for sure. And otherwise, yeah, I mean, I think these are a little controversial looks-wise because some people find them beautiful and other people don't. I think they're cool looking. They're very modern, very futuristic. In terms of design, these have basically an identical design to the original, but of course there's some key upgrades, which is the reason for this existing. So the most obvious upgrade is that this has these stealth magnets incorporated into its design. An equally important upgrade on the Stealth Edition is that it is a lot easier to drive. It is probably not a bad idea to still use this with an amp. I mean, most of you probably will who get this, but it's not totally dependent on an amp for proper leveling. And even when you do use an amp with it, you're not gonna need to, inject as much power into it to get it to where you need. The originals needed a fair amount of drive to get that proper volume. These are a good 30–40% louder than the original, maybe 50%. That seems like not quite, but they are a fair amount louder, considerably so. All right, so let's talk about how this sounds. Hey guys, Luke here. Just wanted to pop in and say that if you're enjoying this video, it would be great if you could subscribe and hit the bell to get notified when we make new content, and hit the like button and leave us a comment if you have any suggestions or questions or anything like that. I would love to talk to you guys more. We would really love some help growing the channel, and just want to make sure that we're reaching our audience and whatnot. So yeah, any support is greatly appreciated, and let's get back to the review. So I'm going to start off just by giving my general impressions of this on its own, and then I will talk about how it compares to the original Arya afterwards. So the soundstage on this definitely goes for that hyper-realistic feel to me. It has a very immediately explorable sound, so it really exposes even the smallest intricacies, just puts them right out in the open for you. Just makes her a very intimate, kind of increased sense of engagement with the music, which is what you want from a good soundstage and a good open back headphone. The Arya Stealth's soundstage does not feel impossibly wide. It reaches far enough sort of within reason of the music, but it doesn't kind of reformat or shift things around an excessive amount. So your song is definitely given added width, but is it reimagined or restructured? Not generally. I found the soundstage on these to be appreciable, but I wouldn't say it was the focal point of my experience with them. I wasn't constantly caught off guard by it. It wasn't something that I put them on and my first thought was oh my God, widest headphone ever. It just felt like it kind of accomplished a realistic, overall immersive feel. But like I said, it didn't seem to be completely just restructuring and giving a whole new spin to things, and it doesn't generally have to. It's just a matter of what this headphone does. Some people want that restructured, you know, like drastic shift, and other people do not. So in terms of low end, this once again, very natural. That's kind of a theme within this. This is a very natural sounding headphone, very realistic. There's not a ton of synthetic timbre going on whatsoever. These are not for the bass hungry. They're not super intense in the low end. They trade that intensity in favor of a lot of realism. They want that believable sound from the low end that picks up on those detailed timbres, that gives you that feeling of intimacy, of kind of really experiencing the music in real time. So I never felt like music was being deprived of low end that it needed to have, but I did feel like it was just being conveyed in a very controlled, you know, tightened up way that did not sacrifice the rest of the mix whatsoever. It's definitely putting impact and believability above just pure intensity. This headphone is not trying to just boost the sub range or just make this insane, like, over the top theatrical low end response. It's making this organic, very attack kind of focused low end that is, once again, very organic sounding, has a nice sort of dry feel to it, but isn't too boxy. So the mid-range on the Arya Stealth further builds upon this kind of natural characteristic that we've started off with on the low end. One of the other things I found with this headphone that it does well is it is able to offer a ton of detail and definition without a ton of boosting, because it has those performance abilities. It doesn't need to bring out elements by just basically turning them up. It's able to bring them out by more sort of nuanced characteristics. So the low mids are fairly neutral and nondescript. They don't stick out. They don't feel like a frequency range that is, you know, immediately obvious to the ear. The high mids are a little bit different. They're definitely extended and given some added bite. The high mids to me were a little bit of a departure from this kind of hyper-realistic, super organic sound. They have a bit more extension on them that does call some attention to that area. There's definitely some slight resonance, and at a higher volume, you will find maybe some added intensity to music from that mid-range. I didn't find it to be like an assault on my ears, and I have very sensitive ears, but it was something I noticed more so in contrast to how docile the rest of this headphone is in terms of its tuning and handling. So the high mid just has that kind of added flair, a bit more of a sort of spark to it that is not seen in the rest of this tuning that tends to be a bit more of a delicate hand. With the music, the high mid definitely commands things a little bit more, but it kind of balances things out in a way to add a little bit of an edge and not make everything so kind of on the safe side. So the high end is definitely, once again, this very natural, delicate feel. It sort of, you know, tapers off from that more intense high mid area. The highs on the Arya Stealth are probably one of my favorite things about it. It does remind me a lot of the high end I hear on other HifiMan headphones like the Ananda, though it's maybe a little bit brighter, but it has that sort of HifiMan natural feel to it that really does capture the detail and the definition, but once again does not do it by creating a ton of shine, and that is really impressive and important to creating a natural, believable sound. Because the truth is that in real life, high end is quite bright often, but it's not like this. It's, you know, nuanced. It has peaks and valleys, and it goes all over the place. So when a headphone just takes the high end and shelves it right up there, you kind of get this linear just across the board that is a bit unrealistic and very synthetic sounding and often quite metallic. And on this, they don't do that. It has those abilities to get those peaks and valleys, to reach those really crisp edges, but also kind of round them off and tame them and soften those areas when needed. So it's a crisp high end, but it's offset by that like really expert control. I just found it to be an easy listening experience with the high end that had all that detail, but none of the fatigue you often have to trade in order to get that level of kind of definition. And once again, I like that it achieves the natural sound, not through just adding like a bunch of warmth or you know, coloring things and thinking that that's gonna make it sound sort of like special in some way. It feels really transparent and once again, just very hyper-realistic and true to life. All right, so how does the original compare to this new Arya Stealth version? Let's talk about that. So both of these headphones I still think are great. I love the original Arya, I love the new one. They both kind of lock everything into this subtlety that really never breaks the sense of immersion. They have a really just engaging and exciting signature to listen to. There are differences. They are not insane, but they are audible, they are there, they are undeniable, they are supposed to be there. This new version has definitely been tightened up, retuned a bit to kind of improve upon some potential arguable flaws in the original version. Of course, this is all highly debated. So one of the first things I noticed about the new version was that the high mid felt a bit more realistic on this one. It felt less stuffy and metallic than it was on the original version that kind of had a little bit more bite to it than I wanted at times. This difference was not drastic, but it was audible, like I said. There's also just more impact on the Arya Stealth throughout. There's a snappier top end and a punchier bottom end for sure. And that was probably the greatest improvement in my opinion. That extra definition did really just level things up a bit and sort of build upon the already exciting sound we had from the original Arya and give it, you know, an added level of flair. The final thing I noticed was that the soundstage on the new Arya Stealth is definitely different from the original. The new soundstage has a bit more blend to it than I saw on the original one. As I talked about kind of soundstages that really reformat the sound, the original Arya has a little bit more of that kind of changed vantage point, that more sort of like reimagined structure, whereas the new one does a little bit less of this kind of, you know, structural changes. Some people will definitely prefer the more feathery, airy sound of the original soundstage, but others will kind of want that more integrated sound offered on the new one. Also, maybe you prefer the old soundstage, but you find the tuning improvements and the improved definition on the new Arya Stealth kind of make it a better option. It depends on your priorities. I don't feel like the soundstage on this one was lacking personally. I just felt like it was a different kind of approach and it didn't go for as much of a kind of drastic shift in the imaging as the original did. So if you do prefer the soundstage on the original, then maybe that's the one to go for, but it depends on if you feel like the tuning of the new one is preferable. And for some people, they would rather have the tuning they prefer than the soundstage they would prefer. Of course, it'd be great if there was a, you know, version that combined the soundstage of the old one and the tuning of the new one, so we could all have that option. But for now, we do not have that option, and they have kept the original Arya released, and I think that's because maybe they know that some people will want the original version. I don't know if they have plans to phase it out or not. I'm not in on those secrets, but I do know that this version definitely does add a new angle on multiple avenues, and I'm glad that they kept the old one for those people that want it. But this new one will definitely cater to an audience, especially people that maybe were a little like kind of skeptical of the old Arya or had some reservations about it. This seems like it could win some people over perhaps. So yeah, I'm a fan of the new Arya Stealth. I am curious to hear everyone else's thoughts. Let me know in the comments what you feel about this upgrade, whether you're thinking about getting this one or the old one or a different headphone altogether. Let me know, let's talk about it. I feel like this version keeps most of the charm of the old version and just adds a few different kind of tweaks here and there that do give it a bit of a newfangled feel. I will link to Major Hi-Fi's headphone ranking tool below where you can compare all the different HifiMan headphones to any headphone you want to and to each other and all those things. I will also link to my colleague's review of the Arya Stealth. And yeah, I will be back soon with some more videos and reviews. And until next time, happy listening.